This is Jamie mentioned we are back for another episode of Libertarian Censored podcast, going over another episode, every post on the Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have January 6 rioters argue pardons apply to charges including murder plot, child porn from WSJ.com by CH4Locks, and that's crosspost from the Fuck the Alt-Right subreddit. And yeah, I definitely do think that presidential pardons do tend to be a little too all-encompassing and powerful. But with that being said, the people complaining about the pardons on the January 6 rioters won't complain at all about the pardons issued for people like Hunter Biden or Anthony Fauci, because it's all about who's in the in-group and who's in the out-group. If the in-group gets a pardon, it's completely justified, but if the out-group gets it, then it's the worst thing ever. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have DOJ has 1 hour to decide who will dismiss Mayor Adams' case or be fired/resign from Stunning Performance 1. That's crosspost from the Fed Discussion subreddit. It's a blue sky post from Barb McQuaid. DOJ leadership has put all public integrity section lawyers into a room with 1 hour to decide who will dismiss Adams' indictment, or else all will be fired, sending them strength to stand by their oath, which is not supports the Constitution, not the president's political agenda. And yeah, that kind of seems like a mean thing to do if he asked me to just throw him all into a room and say, when he has to do this or all you'll be fired. But that's authoritarian governance for you, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened during, Biden and Obama's terms in office. But, Reddit wouldn't call that out because, as I said earlier, it all just depends who's in the in-group and who's in the out-group. Then we have, can we all now agree that POTUS has too much power from Plasma and Ferdy? And they said, I've been arguing for a long time that POTUS has too much power. The last time any power got taken away from POTUS was Nixon. The War Powers Act of 1973 got vetoed by Nixon. Thus Congress overrode, vetoed, and passed it anyway. And a veto override requires a 2/3 majority, so a good chunk of his own party felt the POTUS should not have that power. I think that may be the last time checks and balances actually worked. Now it's 2025, Orange Man is in office, and he's wrecking the federal government. And the worst part is, it's not him, it's Elon Musk, a man who was not elected, was never vetted by Congress, it doesn't have any cabinet position. And a lot of things look pretty damn suspicious. USA got defended and shut down. Funny, USA was investigating Sterling's contract to Ukraine for impropriety. And a bunch of FBI agents just got pink slips. But all the agents let go were involved in the January 6th investigation. And Elon Musk is now threatening U.S. journalists with jail time, a violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Anyone on the January 6th committee is being threatened with legal proceedings. And don't get me started on the executive orders. Executive orders are supposed to be instructions by POTUS and on how the executive branch conducts its business. They're not supposed to be laws, but that's been abused by so many presidents over the years that there's no going back at this point. They had a few more paragraphs, I'm not going to read all of them. But with that being said, I would agree with that. I personally think they're being a little overly harsh on Elon. But with that being said, the president, the U.S. government has, the president's office has been historically centralizing power since Woodrow Wilson, if not Abraham Lincoln. And the fact that people are really complaining about it now is only because Donald Trump's, in the out-group rather than the in-group, as I said for most of the posts on the subreddit. But yeah, I do think the president, the power of these government is over-centralized in the president, but there's really nothing you can do at this point. I personally think it's time to just start over and just have voluntary government rather than the forced collectivist government that we have now, but I don't think that's being very realistic. I just think it's just going to continue like this for forever, and yeah, it's not very optimistic, but that just seems to be what happens. Everyone, social media is always like the sky is falling, the world is ending, but in reality, nothing really ever much changes or happens. It seems, despite how social media might seem like it to be otherwise. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Argentina. President accused of fraud over crypto crash from BBC.com by Ninja Lover, and they didn't have crypto scammer on my bingo card. What a complete disappointment this guy is. And yeah, I personally think, Malay was kind of stupid to just promote that meme coin. I personally think, you shouldn't be promoting crypto, or at the very least meme coins, if you're in a position of authority or power and influence. But, if you want to justify doing that, I think you should be able to. But with that being said, it was, I think it might have just been a mistake on his part, but this Ninja Lover here is that their case of r/politics brain rot has gotten so severe that they've pretty much turned on anyone remotely libertarian in favor of being just your generic DNC shitlib. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have Republicans consider cuts and work requirements for Medicaid, jeopardizing care for millions, from APnews.com by Dr. 07. And yeah, I don't think they'll go through with it, uh, if but because the government never seems to shrink, it only grows regardless of the party in power. They might say they'll do cuts, but I don't think they'll actually go through with it. And also, I do get my insurance for Medicaid, so full disclosure, I kind of have my own personal interest here. But personally, I think we should have we should have a voluntarily funded Medicaid rather than forced collectively funded Medicaid. But regardless, I don't really care for the program if I'm on it. But ultimately, I don't think any cuts are gonna come because they'll say they consider cuts, but ultimately they won't go through with them. That's one of the things I respect about Trump. He may say he says a lot, and he does actually go through with some of it. Most politicians say a lot and go through with none of it. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, I am loving this representative from my home state. She has been fighting the House on the Musk takeover since the start, from Ragnar OKXG, and that's crosswords from the Lib subreddit. And yeah, that's probably just some generic shit lib representative saying Tesla man bad. And that's pretty much all Reddit is at this point. Orange man bad, Tesla man bad. Reddit, I personally don't care for Orange Man. I care for Tesla man a bit more than Orange Man, but still not too much. But regardless, Reddit seems to have no values other than those two at this point. And it just shows you that, they're so in bitter, resentful, and hateful of anything else besides those two, of them and everything else, that I won't be surprised if they just turned against policies that they supported because Orange Man happens to be against them. Like if Orange Man says, "Oh, I'm going to cut the military budget," suddenly they'll say, "Oh, that's what Putin wants," and it just goes to show you these people aren't principled; they're just tribal partisan hacks. They'll always say, "Oh, Fox News is biased propaganda." Well, I would argue that Reddit is far worse than Fox News, or indeed any of the liberal mainstream media as well. At this point, it's pretty much all just DNC propaganda gobbledygook. Orange Man bad, Tesla man bad, give up dudes. And it gets tiring after a while, but ultimately they don't seem to get tired of it. Probably most of them are. It's probably because most of them are either bots or paid shills, but that's my thoughts on that one. And we have Trump uses Supreme Court immunity ruling to claim unrestricted power from NewRepublic.com, and that's crossed by John 13 across from the SCOTUS subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that, but Trump talks out of his ass a lot, and this is him doing that again. I personally don't think anything is going to come of it, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Then we have White House says Musk is not Doge employee, has no authority to make decisions, from Reuters.com by Ragnar OKXG. And yeah, I would say that if he's not a Doge employee and he doesn't have authority to make decisions, they can say that. Even ultimately, it comes down to who has the power and force to justify what. So if they want to say that, ultimately they need to enforce that as well. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter what they say. People always say, "Oh, laws are so important." Well, I would say that laws don't actually matter at all. They're just words written down on a piece of paper. What matters is how they are enforced. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump has just signed an executive order claiming that only the president and attorney general can speak for what the law is, from Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the 5051 subreddit. And yeah, I personally think everyone should be able to find what the law is in their own right, but ultimately, if Trump wants to say only I can define what the law is, he should be able to do so. But as I said earlier, it doesn't matter who can say what the law is, it matters how it's enforced more so. And yeah, you're definitely seeing that in regards to the U.S. government currently. They say, "Oh, all the writers say, oh, this is unconstitutional, this is illegal," even ignoring that they were completely fine for anything that Biden did when he was in office. But yeah, ultimately it doesn't really matter what's legal or not; just determines who has the force to do what, and that's pretty much all government. It's who has the force, not who has the law on their side. As Andrew Jackson said back like 200 years ago, John Marshall made his decision. He was the Supreme Court Chief Justice back then. Now let him enforce it, and that was how the Supreme Court ruled against the Trail of Tears, but then Andrew Jackson just did anyway, since he had the force on his side. It just matters who has the force on their side rather than anything else. Then we have Trump just signed an executive order claiming only he and the Attorney General alone can define what the law is from Ragnarok XG, and that's crossed from the public freakout subreddit. And yeah, we just talked about that one, so I'll go skip that. I'll go over that one for now. Then we have CoffeeZilla interview with Hayden and Libra Melania from Anarcho Federation. That's a YouTube video from CoffeeZilla, or his extra channel, Voidzilla, I guess. And they said, Hayden is instructor inside of cryptocurrency schemes and honestly sounds like a true believer. Hayden admits to these meme coins being sniping insider scams, as it is the only practical way to profit off of. However, he finds no problem with the insider fraud as they're a true ideologue. He admits to the behaviors of these schemes by insiders and reveals criminal activity of Trump and Melania's pump and dump scams, practically incriminating the whole game. And I would agree with that. I personally think a lot of crypto is just a scam. I like crypto in being a non-government money, but other than that, I definitely don't trust a lot of crypto, especially outside of Bitcoin. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump's full executive order ensuring accountability for all agencies from whitehouse.gov from Dr. 07. And yeah, I personally don't care for a lot of Trump and his executive orders. I think even though he does do some libertarian things, he's ultimately an authoritarian. But with that being said, hopefully nothing will come of this. Nothing seems to come a lot of what he says, but we'll have to see what happens. Then we have Trump says Zelensky should have never started war with Russia from thehill.com by CH4Locks, and that's cross-post from the Russia Lago subreddit. And yeah, that's just Trump talking about his ass again. I would argue that, the U.S. is far more responsible for and the U.S. and U.S. foreign policy are far more responsible for the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, who also are more responsible in Ukraine than Ukraine itself is. Ukraine is kind of just like a U.S. puppet state, just kind of like Israel at this point, and the U.S. just funnels aid into them, and it's not increasingly an independent government. It's just part of the U.S. global empire, and you increasingly see that by how the media and it's just saying, well, we have to defend Ukraine at all costs. It's because it's essentially a state at this point, even more so than some of the United States in regards to how much taxpayer dollars it gets. Then we have the Supreme Court can fix this mess of its own making. From Lemon Limelight, from an opinion piece in the Washington Post, the Supreme Court can fix this mess of its own making. This week, the Supreme Court can begin cleaning up the brickable mess. It was bricked by just the time that it may be a misguided decision 20 years ago. The Justice and Conferences on Friday are set to begin considering whether to decide a case that gives the court the honor to do everything kilo. A decision so bad it provoked the passage of many beneficial state laws. When a regional healthcare provider announced plans to build a hospital in downtown Utica, New York, Brian Bowers, a local developer, and his partner saw an opportunity. They purchased an unoccupied building, planning to turn it into medical offices, which would have competed with a nearby building occupied by some incorporated cardiologists. They too saw an opportunity, one dependent on getting government employee supervision on their behalf, wanting to turn the property that Bowers bought into a parking lot. They asked the county government development agency to seize property using its power of eminent domain. The agency did so, arguing that the cardiologist corporation would serve community prosperity better than Bowers' plan would. How do we get government forcibly transferring property from party A to party B, a competitor? And yeah, that's just to show you that U.S. government is inherently authoritarian and can justify force with wherever it feels like. And yeah, I personally don't really care for that, but ultimately it does come down to who has the legal monopoly on the use of force, as I said earlier, and that's very much what government is. Then we have The Path to American Authoritarianism by Baton 13. And yeah, that's an article from an archive link from Foreign Affairs. And yeah, I personally don't really care for American authoritarianism, but people are really pushing that Trump at this point, who's the American authoritarian. Well, I would argue that the path to American authoritarianism has already been completed at the very latest by the end of World War II, if not by the Civil War or earlier. And yeah, it just goes to show you how, people care about authoritarianism, but when their side does it, it's not authoritarianism. But when it's the out group doing it instead, it's bloody. They just yell bloody murder all the time, like Reddit does. And yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.